You're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim. These are the headlines on the continent. From Hollywood hero to suspected terrorist, Paul Rusesabagina has been denied bail a second time by a Rwandan court. His family has accused his lawyers of acting for the states. The World Health Organization says it's outraged at allegations of sexual exploitation in the DR Congo. It follows a report this week that aid agency staff tackling the Ebola outbreak sexually abused over 50 women. And Ivory Coast's farmers applaud the decision to hike the minimum price of cocoa by over 20%. The announcement from President Ouattara coming ahead of crucial elections at the end of this month. But first to Rwanda, where a court in Kigali has denied bail a second time to Paul Rusesabagina. The political dissident had requested bail on health grounds, citing a history of cancer and ill health. But the judge refused, saying the Belgian national was a flight risk. Rusesabagina maintains he was tricked into returning to his home country, where he was arrested last month on terrorism charges. Once depicted as the hero in the Hollywood film Hotel Rwanda, he now faces life in prison. France 24's Mukelwa Shashwayo has more.
Paul Rusesabagina has appeared in court today in Rwanda's capital, Kigali, for the fourth time since he was arrested just over a month ago. He's facing 13 charges related to terrorism and murder. Prosecutors say he's behind attacks in Rwanda that happened in 2018. An armed opposition group called the FLN claimed responsibility. Rusesabagina previously told the court he supported the group, but only in a diplomatic role. Today, his second bail application was denied. Rusesabagina requested bail on grounds of his health. He's a cancer survivor and suffers from high blood pressure. People we spoke to who were in court today told us that he looked frail compared to when he was arrested some weeks ago. Rusesabagina became world famous when the movie Hotel Rwanda told the story of how he saved more than 1,000 lives during Rwanda's genocide in 1994. He fled Rwanda just after that. He became a critic of the government of Paul Kagame and founded an opposition party. Other exiled opposition politicians say that he was kidnapped in Dubai by the Rwandan government in August and taken to Kigali. Rights groups say he was forcibly disappeared. Other government critics have previously been jailed or killed in Rwanda and abroad. The government denies any wrongdoing. Rights groups say Paul Rusesabagina has been denied access to his own lawyer and is unlikely to get a fair trial.
The head of the World Health Organization says he's outraged by allegations of sexual abuse by aid workers in DR Congo. Dr. Tedros says anyone involved in the reported abuses would be immediately dismissed. Earlier this week, a report found that more than 50 women had accused mainly foreign aid agency staff of sexual exploitation during the 2018 and 2020 Ebola crisis. 5 out of 7 UN agencies and NGOs named by women in the nearly year-long investigation have now launched inquiries.
To be very clear, we're outraged to read these reports. WHO works around the world in the toughest emergency environments and situations in the world. We come to save lives and spread hope. The betrayal of people in the communities we serve is reprehensible. We will not tolerate behavior like this from our staff, contractors, or partners. Anyone identified as being involved will be held to account and face serious consequences, including immediate dismissal. I have initiated an investigation of the specific allegations as well as broader protection issues in health emergency response.
Now, farmers in Ivory Coast have applauded the move to raise cocoa prices by 20%. The country is the largest exporter, producing more than 40% of the world's cocoa. President Alassane Ouattara's announcement comes just 4 weeks before Ivorians head to the polls. Laurent Berstecker has this report.
Kicking off Ivory Coast's annual cocoa and chocolate trade fair. Alassane Ouattara announced a hike in prices paid to farmers, sparking thunderous applause from the crowd.
Nous avons même décidé d'augmenter le prix de 825 francs CFA à 1000 francs CFA le kilo.
1,000 CFA francs, or $1.80 a kilo, a 21% increase compared to last season, and a similar price to the one announced by Ghana a week ago. The two countries, which are the world's biggest cocoa producers, have been working together for months on a common strategy to shore up global prices. Last year, they managed to impose a living income differential tax of $400 per ton to all buyers, with the extra generated income going straight to farmers and producers. A new tax which came into effect on Thursday, and that was taken into account in the latest price hike.
Cette augmentation traduit notre engagement et notre détermination dans les deux pays à améliorer les revenus et le niveau de vie de nos parents producteurs.
The cocoa industry represents up to 15% of Ivory Coast's GDP and employs around a fifth of the country's population. Alassane Ouattara, who's running for a controversial third term as president, made the announcement just weeks before the country is set to head to the polls. Yet while the price hike was welcomed by most, some farmers' unions say it doesn't go far enough. They claim producers who earn less than 10% of total cocoa revenue will still struggle to make ends meet.
Now for a brief look at some of the other stories making news on the continent. Schools in Nigeria will reopen fully on October the 12th as new coronavirus cases decline in the country. The education minister saying daily infections have dropped by 2/3 since the summer. Africa's most populous nations shut down schools back in March but began a partial reopening last month for graduating students. The government has warned that schools that fail to comply with health guidelines risk closure in the event of an outbreak. Sudan is on the brink of making history. The government and rebels are to sign a landmark peace deal Saturday in a bid to end decades of war. It's been a top priority of the transition government since taking power after last year's ouster of Omar al-Bashir. Sudan has been torn by multiple conflicts between the Arab-dominated government led by Bashir for 3 decades and rebels from non-Arab ethnic groups in its far-flung regions. Hundreds of thousands died in the violence. Both sides have voiced hope for a lasting peace. And award-winning Sudanese filmmaker Hajuj Kuka has been released from prison along with 4 other artists. Kuka had been sentenced to 2 months in prison for causing a public nuisance. He and the others belonging to the so-called Civic Lab, which was inspired by last year's pro-democracy movement. Police arrested them last month while they were rehearsing a play. The incident has prompted some to question how much things have really changed since the ouster of the longtime dictator Omar al-Bashir. Well, let's turn now to the DR Congo, where the country's east has been submerged by torrential rain. Several rivers broke their banks in North Kivu. Its governor says at least 11 people have been killed and several families are still looking for their loved ones. The flooding also washed away a key bridge connecting the cities of Goma and Masisi. Many houses were also damaged or destroyed. Our reporters sent us these reactions from the ground.
Kitu ambacho kinatuleta hapa ni ndugu yangu na mtoto yangu wenye walikuwa wanalima mshamba. Mvula wakati ilinyesha ikawaporomosha. Ile habari tukaipata wakati wa saa 11, ikatubidi population ikaniunga mkono, tukakimbia mtoni yote, basi ndio tumemkuta sasa hapa na ndio maana umetukuta.
Mingi basha kufa. Ndugu yangu tunaimbaka naye mkanisa Edake alifariki jana, tumemzika leo, wanaenda muzika batena muzika huku Luhonga. Hivi hapa na sisi tunalia sana, wakubwa wa nchi tunaweza penda watusaidie na sisi tuishi mzuri, watu wetu wanakufa sana.
Ça va un problème parce que il n'y a plus un passage. Comme vous le constatez, les gens sont transportés au dos, les motos sont transportées et ça cause un grand problème par rapport aux petits marchands et tous les commerçants qui font Goma, Masisi et Minova.
Now, on October the 2nd, 1958, Guinea became the first West African country to gain independence from France. At the time, it was the only French colony to have completely severed ties and opted for complete autonomy. The country's first president, Ahmed Sékou Touré, said, "We prefer poverty in liberty to riches in slavery." While celebrations this year were quite subdued, a small military parade took place in the capital, Conakry, and President Alpha Condé laid down a wreath to mark 62 years of Guinea's independence. Our correspondents talked to some of the people there.
Nous sommes là pour réellement réaffirmer notre indépendance, pour faire en fait comprendre à la face du monde une fois de plus qu'on est vraiment fiers d'être indépendants.
La Guinée, mon pays, a traversé beaucoup de choses et beaucoup de choses ont été faites, mais encore beaucoup reste à faire, surtout pour la jeunesse guinéenne en termes d'emploi.
And that's it from us. Chris Moore is up next with all the latest world news headlines here on France 24. Stay tuned.